And hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the Shabbat Show. Special edition. This is not just a regular week. We are not just speaking about what's coming up this Shabbat. We're actually talking about this whole weekend. This is a weekend in Judaism like no other. We have Shabbat coming up, and then right after that we have the holiest day of the year, the day of Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur is an incredible, incredible day. And I personally think it's one of the most misunderstood days of the year. You know, a lot of times in life, there's miscommunication. You ever have this in life where you said something and someone took it totally out of context, and the way you thought it and the way they thought it is totally different? And the two of you can be in the same room talking about the same thing and having two totally different ways of seeing something. In my humble opinion, one of the most misunderstood days of the year by far is Yom Kippur. The Mishnah actually teaches us there is no greater days of the year than a day called the 15th of Av and the day of Yom Kippur. Now the rabbis are saying this is the most incredible day of the year. The rest of us are saying, I can't wait for this thing to be over. Like, you know what I'm saying? You know that feeling you get when you're like right past your second bagel at the breakfast? And you're thinking like, well, I don't got to do this again for like an entire year. This is the greatest night of the year. Like, this is the longest point on the calendar to the next Yom Kippur. Right? That feeling we get, the anxiety that I got to pray all day. Am I in the good book? Am I in the bad book? I'm probably in the bad book. Oh my God, I want to get out of the bad book. All of that. And the rabbis are being like, oh, no. This is the greatest day of the year. Why? What do they know that we don't know? What are they cluing into that we just aren't aware of? What is it about Yom Kippur that if you really think about it and understand it, you'll realize that, yeah, it's challenging. We love eating. We're Jews. I'd rather not stand. I'd rather relax. But greatness is hard. And this is one of the greatest days in the year. That's what we're going to talk about in the show. This is a show about guilt. Is it a real thing? Jewish guilt. And just what it is and what it's not and how it plays into our lives, how it plays into Yom Kippur. So there's a lot coming up. I hope you stick with us all the way to the end. The first shout out to our new tech team and producer, to Guy Orman and Big Productions. We thank you for taking care of all of what you're seeing right now. And we're ready to roll. So let's talk a little bit about Jewish guilt, because Jewish guilt is sort of part and parcel with how we think, act, and talk. Check out this clip that just really explains Jewish guilt.
Bye, Mordecai. Give my regards to my father.
Okay, wait. Hold on a second, all right?
What?
I didn't want to have to do this, but you leave me no choice. I'm now going to resort to the most dangerous, deadly weapon in the Jewish arsenal. What, I slept all the way up here for this? I mean, I come all the way to the North Pole to fight you? You don't put out anything to nosh on?
You're hungry?
I mean, seriously, what kind of arch nemesis are you?
Sorry, I wasn't thinking, I guess. Oh, no, you don't. You're not going to pull that Jewish guilt crap on me. I'm a lot stronger than that, Mordecai.
Okay, forget it. Never mind.
No, what?
No, nothing.
Tell me, what?
Well, it's just, I mean, I don't know what kind of host it is that treats their company this way. I mean, Esther is clearly unhappy with the guest room you provided her with. You know, I'm schwitzing all over the place from running around shooting people.
Stop this!
What kind of flooring is this anyway? My feet are killing me. Stop it! Look at the fact that I don't even get like a hello when I come in. Hello when I come in. I mean,
Just take my gun.
No, take the gun! No, take it! Forget it!
No, I insist on you taking the gun.
Really? I mean,
Just take it.
I mean, if it's a big deal.
Please, put a bullet right here. Put a bullet in my head. Take me out of my misery, please.
Elmer, you cool?
Everything's kosher, man. You got him?
Yeah, I got it.
Isn't that how a lot of us sort of grew up and lived our lives? I love this episode. By the way, just letting everybody know, this is a show that I have been in very close, like at every show, close contact with my mom. So she has been part of each and every one of these videos. So as soon as I get them, I send them straight to my mom. This is how we live, right? Jewish guilt. Jewish guilt. What is Jewish guilt? We got a great show. We got a lot going on. Please stick with us. We got Rabbi Menachem Lehrerfield coming on now from Denver. We've got Rabbi Y.Y. Rubenstein, originally from Scotland, on the show today. We got Aviva Barnett. We got Jamie Geller. We got another special short crash course with Rabbi Avram Goldhar. We got videos. We got inspiration. This is a great show. 2 changes for this show just for this week alone. Just for this week alone, we will not be having shout-outs. And we will not be having Kahoot. There's a lot going on, and just for a whole bunch of reasons, we won't be able to do that this week. But stick with us all the way to the end. I think you're going to love the show. And at the end, we've got a beautiful song and presentation by Shlomo Simcha of Toronto. And of course, check out the Shabbat Show, theshabbatshow.com. If you want to go back to earlier shows, if you're watching the show and going, oh my gosh, I want to send it to my friend, please get him on. If you can't, send them the show. You can watch it from shabbatshow.com. And of course, I mean, this is Yom Kippur season. Like, why not grow? Why not change? Why not get somebody with you so that you can grow together? Text one-on-one to 97,000 for your own personal study partner. Check out one-on-one to 97,000 and be part of the one-on-one study partner program. Okay, let's begin right away. Our first guest is Rabbi Menachem Lehrerfield. He's the director of the Jewish Outreach Initiative, a bold initiative that has taken Denver by storm. Rabbi Lehrerfield received his MED from Loyola University, Chicago, and received 2 rabbinic ordinations. Rabbi Lehrerfield's passion lies not only in spreading the beauty and relevance of Judaism to all Jews, but in photography, graphic design, mountain climbing, and snowboarding. I had a chance to catch up with Rabbi Lehrerfield. Check out the conversation. So, Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's an honor to have you on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Anytime I get to hang out with Charlie Harari, I jump on.
Well, I feel the same way about you, so I'm happy we get to do it. Even though we are physically far, we are definitely spiritually close. And this show really is talking about guilt. And when you talk about the concept of guilt, there's a lot of words that jump with it that don't mean the same. And what I want to do here is really talk about the concept of the difference between guilt and regret. Because if you don't know the difference, you maybe not be able to fully understand how to navigate each. So walk us through it. What is guilt? What is regret? And how does one navigate both?
It's a really good question. And I think it speaks to the core of, I think, why we have this misconception that Jewish guilt is really a thing. I don't remember who the comedian was, but the line goes that religion is really just guilt with holidays sprinkled on. And I think part of that is that we have so many misconceptions really about foundational Jewish concepts.
Yeah. And
part of that, like you said, is this distinction between guilt and regret. Right? Why do we feel guilty? I think we feel guilty because let's face it, we live in a predominantly Christian society. So whenever we use any word that talks about or defines some sort of spiritual or religious concept, we're automatically conjuring up some image that oftentimes is not really a Jewish value, right? You say the word heaven, you think of a Dannon commercial. You think of angels as these fat, naked babies, and we think of God as this old man with a long white beard. And if that's our conception, so then Yom Kippur kind of becomes this day where we are saying sorry for angering this God and we need to do something to appease him. And we feel guilty. We feel bad. Now, like you said, there's a big difference between guilt and regret. I heard years ago from Rav Usher Resnick in East Jerusalem. He gave the analogy. He said, imagine you borrow this priceless heirloom from a friend and he lends it to you, but he says, just be really, really careful. It's priceless. It cannot be replaced. Just be careful with it. And through your own negligence, it breaks. Like, how do you feel? I would imagine you feel guilty. Now imagine the exact same scenario, but this time it's still a priceless heirloom and it still breaks, but instead of belonging to your friend, it belongs to you. How do you feel? You still feel terrible, but that negative feeling is not guilt, it's regret. Right? Guilt is something that we feel when we feel like we've done something bad to someone else. We've hurt someone else. Whereas regret is really, I think, the idea of falling short. It's understanding and recognizing that I have not lived up to the person I know I am. I know that I've, made a mistake and it's affecting me. The Hebrew word, and that's the thing, is this time of year we throw around all these words, like sin and repentance, and like, what does that even mean? Yeah. And oftentimes it's not the Jewish value, right? The Hebrew word chet doesn't mean a sin. It means I've missed the mark. I've made a mistake. And the very fact, I think, that we feel guilty means that we don't really get that.
Right.
Because God is not this angry man in the sky. Right. God is he's our Father, and he loves us, and he is a loving Father, only wants the best for us. And Yom Kippur is not about appeasing him. It's about doing teshuvah. And we can define that word as repentance, but then we miss the whole point.
Very good. Very powerful.
Teshuvah is really about returning to oneself. And that's, I think, what Yom Kippur is all about. It's really about recognizing who we really are.
Tell me a little bit more in terms of where you think Yom Kippur plays into this, because that's really where we're going to and how all this sort of plays out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really is part and parcel of every part of Yom Kippur. Once we look at it through that lens, we can go through the entire Yom Kippur service and we see that everything should be, very different. One of the most peculiar parts of the Yom Kippur service, I think, is where we describe the offering that was done in the temple. They did this thing called the Azazel, where they had these two goats, and they had to be identical. Like in every conceivable way, they had to be the same. They had to look the same. They had to weigh the same amount. They had to be worth the same amount of money. They had to be purchased at the same time from the same person. And then they would take these two goats, and one of them was brought as an offering in the Holy of Holies, and the other was banished off a cliff, sent to the lowest place imaginable. And it's such an unusual offering. And I don't want to get into the whole animal sacrifice thing right now. I don't think we have the time for that. But there's such a profound lesson that we learn from this focal point of the Yom Kippur service. The very fact that my mistakes that are associated and represented by that scapegoat, that's where the concept of the scapegoat comes from. The very fact that I can banish that off a cliff means that those mistakes were never really a part of who I was. They were always external. In fact, the term we use for someone who's made a mistake is a Baal Avera, which literally means the owner of a sin. That the same way the airline can lose my luggage, that tells you that it was never part of me. It was my luggage. It was my baggage. The fact that we can take that and throw it off a cliff means it was never really me. I belong in the Holy of Holies. And that's why we take these two identical goats. The same way I can go through my year, and oftentimes I do things I'm not proud of. And oftentimes I look in the mirror and I say, you know what? That's who I am. Yom Kippur reminds us that's not who I am.
Right.
I belong in the Holy of Holies. I might have made a mistake, but that mistake does not define me. I might have sinned, but I am not a sinner. And I think that's one of the most crucial parts of Yom Kippur. And we see that through that service. And we see that, I think, through every aspect and element of Yom Kippur. We forget it's a holiday. And I think it's a holiday that celebrates our mistakes. That's what it means to be a human being. I made a mistake, but I can pick myself up and I can grow from that.
Incredible. Rabbi, thanks so much for the time, for the wisdom. Keep on shining your light, and have an incredible Yom Kippur. And I know because of your words, it'll be more meaningful to all of us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Al is an incredible interview, and I think he's totally right. I mean, I think this is the distinction that we're starting to build right now, which is this concept of there's something about me, something great about me that's part of this day, and the regret that I feel is me being more. It's not like I need to do it for this invisible God who seems to always be disappointed and is holding over my head life and death if I don't do the things that he wants, that I don't really listen to what they are. There is a sense of being able to be part of a bigger world and recognize that God knows things that we don't know. It's not that everything is whatever I want to do, but it's much more of an internal growth of there's a God inside me. And what I'm feeling now isn't really the guilt of dropping the vase. What I'm feeling really is the regret that here I am standing before the Creator and I really could be more connected. I really could be bigger spiritually, and if I'm really being honest with myself and I'm not just giving the excuse of where I was from or what happened along the way or my wife or my kids or my friends or my rabbi or whatever the reasons are, if I really am being honest with myself, I could be more. And I think that aspect of Yom Kippur is daunting, is challenging, but it's also very liberating. And it opens up a pathway to so much growth that is so much greater than I feel bad for something that's beyond me that I don't really feel bad for. And I thank you, Rabbi, for just bringing that out. And I think it's just a critical piece of how we create the distinction between regret and guilt. Check out this video from Aish.com that really speaks about really the steps of how one goes through actual change. Check this out. Thank you, Aish.com, for that. And really, you should check out Aish.com. They've got tons of incredible videos really taking very complex ideas. This video really broke down a very important, complex process in such an incredible way. Check them out. But yet we're still talking about Jewish guilt. Where did it come from? Right? It came, at least for me, it came from my mom, right? My mom got it from my grandmother. Like, this is where we get it from. It's the tradition of my family of Jewish guilt. But really, let's get underneath it, what it really means. Our next guest is Rabbi Y.Y. Rubenstein. Rabbi Rubenstein was born in Scotland and moved to England when he was 20. Before moving to the United States in September 2011, he was a familiar figure on national BBC television and radio, being a regular on several programs. Her Majesty the Queen asked to meet him, declaring that he was awfully good. He is the author of 10 books on various Jewish and general themes available on Amazon, teaches in countless institutions, and travels around the world sharing his wisdom and humor. I had a chance to catch up with Rabbi Rubenstein. Check out the conversation that we had. So, Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's an honor to have you on.
Real pleasure. Really great to see you again after such a long interlude. Isn't it horrible? Stops friends from meeting up. That's really a bummer.
We're talking about guilt. And we know, listen, I'm sure that the two of us are born into this world. We know how this works. Talk to me about guilt, Jewish guilt. Why is guilt associated with Jews, Jewish mothers? Is there any real truth to that?
Yeah, of course there is. I remember there's a book. There was a terrible book, which it's called I think it was actually used in a word we won't use, but the Non-Jewish Woman's Guide to Getting a Jewish Husband. And it showed you all, because it said, Jews make better husbands than non-Jewish husbands. Said very unpolitically correct back in the day. And it said because obviously they earn more, not sure that's true, they tend not to be alcoholics as much, and all this, and they don't beat up their wives so much. So this is how to get one. And there's a whole chapter on the Jewish woman's guilt trip. But of course, all humor is based on fact. So if everybody's offended, I'm sorry, I just do not do PC. Sorry. But yeah, we are synonymous with guilt because we do Yom Kippur. I mean, it's not just one day of regret. You've got a month, and then you've got the Day of Judgment. And then you've got another 10 days, and then Yom Kippur, right? And so, I mean, if you're taking up basically a 12th or more of a person's life with institutional religious guilt, it rubs off.
Yeah. Listen, I can tell you honestly, I was raised on guilt. I mean, there's no question I was raised on guilt. I got it. It was passed down from my grandmother, who passed it down to my mother, who passed it down to me. I feel like I have antibodies. I feel like I have guilt antibodies. That's my personal opinion. We should really have my mom on the show, and we can really have that conversation. So I am right down the fairway of trying to read mom's guilt, and now I could watch my wife pick up the tradition and give it to my children.
Of course.
How do we navigate around it with this idea really of love, right? The Jewish religion really is not, I mean, I think growing up, there is this way of seeing God as the person who's always upset with us or whatever. But as we delve into it, we realize that's not the case. It can't possibly be that the creator of the universe is out there just hitting us with this spiritual stick. So one balance between this, like you said, this institutional guilt with what we really deep down know as something bigger.
Absolutely. Look, here's the big deal. The big deal is at this time of the year, there's a prayer which we stick in 3 times a day or twice a day. It's called Avinu Malkeinu. And it's all the things we did wrong. It's all the guilt trip. Well, guilt. And then, but what's the first word? Avinu. Right, before he's Malkeinu is a scary image, off with his head, the king. No. But before that, he's a father. And every father wants to see his child back again, whether it's a son or whether it's a daughter. That's the thing that you miss. And there's so much more to say in this. And that is, God set up. Let me give you a message direct from God, because I got this directly from God. Because he told Moses, and he told the people who wrote the books, and I've read them. So this is directly from the Almighty. And he told Adam, the first day of judgment, the first Rosh Hashanah, was Adam, who messed up. We probably all know that story. Apple, snake, that bit. Anyway, after that, there was the day of judgment, the first Rosh Hashanah. Then he told Adam, say this to your children and tell them to pass it on to their children afterwards. I didn't set up the day in order to judge you and convict. I set up the day in order to judge you and acquit.
As we're delving into this Jewish guilt versus the God thing, the God guilt, if you will, Yom Kippur versus Jewish guilt and how it all connects, it's like how you opened with it, which is God's taking the time to evaluate us because he wants us. Just like mom or whoever, it's coming from a place of desire. And if they wouldn't give us guilt, what would we do? Like, I don't even know. Like, I don't know what my week would be like. And it's this incredible way that we process the desire to connect. And what I'm hearing from you, which is so important for people to understand, is that in some interesting way, Yom Kippur is the proof that we are valuable enough for the creator of the world to want to connect to us. And that's just off the charts.
Absolutely. Remember, all the things we're not allowed to do, not allowed to eat, no distractions, no relationships, no physical love, cuddle, the husband and wife. No. It's you and me, God says.
Yeah.
I once told you I was once in a plane crash. I'm not going to get into this because it would take too long. But when I was flying around in the month of Elul, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, we'd lost the front wheels in takeoff. And I get very emotional thinking of my children, my 2 little girls, 4 and 7, who were probably going to grow up, I thought, not knowing who the daddy was, my sons, my wife, and all very close. But I have to tell you, when you think you're going to die, and I really did think I was going to die, the only real relationship is you and Hashem. Or just me and him. And that's not in any way to diminish my love for my wife and Hashem or my children. It's strong. It was strong. But the real deal, the final relationship is you and God.
Wow. And that's what really guilt is all about, right? Like, it really is, if you break it down, it really is love, right? Because remember, if there'd be nobody to give guilt, it really means they don't really care. And this is something that I think is such a critical piece of us understanding this whole process, both with regards to our moms or our parents, both with regards to our children, for those who are watching it with your parents right now, but also with regards to God. Remember the idea that there is a pull towards something, that there is some passive-aggressive conversation to get you to feel bad, really is a way of saying, I love you and I need you in my life. And if we just see past it, we get to laugh about the guilt part because it's so uniquely us. But we also get to appreciate where it's coming from. Check out this video. I got to tell you, one of the highlights of my week was my mom came over to the house this week. I know that she's watching, and we got to watch this video together. I cannot believe this must have been scripted out of my home, at least parts of it at least. But I check this out. This may remind you of someone that's in your life, but check out this video on just the guilt that many of us have grown up in.
Hello?
Hello, Arthur. This is your mother. Do you remember me?
Mom, I was just going to call you. Is that a funny thing? You know that I had my hand on the phone.
You were supposed to call me last Friday.
Mother, honey, I know I just didn't have a second and I could cut my throat.
Arthur, I sat by that phone all day Friday.
Honey, I was working.
All day Friday night.
Darling, I was in the lab.
And all day Saturday.
Mom,
and all day Sunday.
Mom,
and your father finally said to me, Phyllis, eat something, you'll faint. I said, no, Harry, no. I don't want my mouth to be full when my son calls me.
Mom.
And you never called.
Mother, I was sending up a rocket. I didn't have a second.
Well, it's always something, isn't it?
How are you?
I'm sick.
I'm sorry to hear it. What's wrong?
Nothing. Well, you know what it is, Arthur.
Yeah.
It's the same thing it's always been.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
It's my nerves.
Yeah.
And, I went to the doctor.
Of course, yeah.
And he told me.
Yeah.
He said, listen, Mrs. White, you are a very nervous, very high-strung woman.
Yeah, well, God knows that's true.
And you cannot stand the slightest aggravation.
Well, no. Well, of course.
So I said, Doctor, I know that.
Yeah,
I know, and you know, I do. I know that.
Yeah.
I said, but you see, Doctor, I have this son. And he's very busy. And it's the truth. He's busy. I said, you see, Doctor, he's too busy to pick up a phone and call his mother.
Mom, honey, I want you to tell me...
When I said that to him, that man turned pale.
Right. Mother...
He said, Mrs. White, I have been a doctor for 35 years.
Darling.
And I've never heard of a son too busy to call his mother.
I know, Mom.
That's just what he said to me, Arthur.
I know.
And that man is a doctor.
Mother, listen to me, please. Please. Just don't worry.
Arthur, what does that mean? Honey, what does that mean, don't worry?
Well, nothing, actually. I don't know. I said the first thing that came into my head.
Listen to me, Arthur. I'm a mother.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And
Listen, what's the use of talking, you know? You're very young. Someday, honey, you'll get married.
Mom.
And you'll have children of your own.
Mom, please.
And, honey, when you do, I only pray that they make you suffer the way you're making me. That's all I pray, Arthur. That's a mother's prayer.
Okay, Mom, thanks for calling.
And listen, I hope I didn't make you feel bad.
Are you kidding? I feel awful.
Oh, honey, if I could believe that, I'd be the happiest mother in the world.
And for all those children out there that were on the receiving end, for all the Arthurs out there that had one moment in their lives where they just did not call mom enough, I just want you to feel it together right now. And I just want to just publicly, on behalf of all of us out there, especially in light of Yom Kippur and in light of the Day of Forgiveness, I want to just represent all of the, in particular, sons that seem to be too busy to call mom at the level that mom wants us to call and just say, I'm sorry, mom. We should be calling you a lot more. I think, I can't tell you which one of my favorite line, but I think when she said, when Arthur goes, don't worry, and she goes, I don't know what that means. I think I think we've all heard that. And we know it comes from love. And this is really what it comes down to. This is what we're talking about, right? This sense of trying to lure us back. Guilt really is this cover for love. And when it's used in a way that is misconstrued as God needs us to do things, the whole thing separates us. But when it's really something that's deep and internal, and we know we could have been more, we could have been closer, we could have been more connected, it's actually super empowering. It's a very empowering concept. We've got a great thing coming up right now. Before, just to remind you that we've got a beautiful song and art presentation at the end of the show today, so stick with us all the way to the end. We have a great opportunity now to really go through with Rabbi Avram Goldhar, one of his crash courses. He's actually the founder of the Goldhar School, home of the fastest Jewish education on earth. You can go and get more information at goldharschool.com. But there's a really cool crash course for those who want a little bit more of the background, of the history, of where Yom Kippur even came from. Great way, just in a few minutes, to get a lot of great information. Check this out. The crash course from Yom Kippur from Rabbi Goldhar.
Welcome to the crash course in Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish year. While the Sabbath is the holiest day of the week, the Torah refers to Yom Kippur as Shabbat Shabbaton, the Sabbath of Sabbaths. It's understood in Jewish tradition as a spiritual homecoming for the Jewish people. What's the source of Yom Kippur's sanctity, and what can we do to make the most of this holy day? Yom Kippur originates with the tragic story of the golden calf. After our liberation from Egypt, the miracles at the sea, and then the revelation of Mount Sinai, the Jewish people stood transformed as God's treasured nation. We are about to realize our destiny as we had just entered a covenant with God. And then we broke it. After only 40 days, what happened? Moses had ascended Mount Sinai to receive the Torah for 40 days, and the people miscalculated the time of his return. When he didn't come down as they anticipated, they panicked, and they built a golden calf and danced around it, and they declared, "This is the God of Israel that took us out of Egypt." Meanwhile, Moses had just received the tablets bearing the Ten Commandments when God informs him that the people are sinning, that he's going to wipe out the nation and rebuild the nation from Moses. Moses has to plead for our survival. He then descends the mountain, sees people dancing around the calf. He smashes the tablets, he destroys the calf, and he goes up the mountain for a total of 80 days to beg forgiveness and to convince God to forge a new relationship with the Jewish people. Finally, Moses ascends the mountain with a second set of tablets, and for the very first time, the Jewish people receive atonement for their sin. That day, forever since, is celebrated as Yom Kippur, which means the Day of Atonement. On Yom Kippur, it doesn't matter how far we've strayed in relationship with God. Yom Kippur envelops every Jew and reaches their inner core. As long as we're sincere, then we too, like the Jews of the desert, can reestablish our pristine relationship with Him. That's because atonement is different than forgiveness. When you forgive someone, you're willing for the relationship to go on, but you still remember their misdeed. It's always there in the back of your mind. Atonement literally wipes away the transgression, as if it never happened. It gives you a fresh new start. That's why only God can atone. All we have to do is be willing to do some spiritual work. Tradition teaches that during the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, God is especially near to us. It's a specific window when it's easier to choose to become our ideal selves. We can ask for forgiveness and say goodbye to past mistakes and take on new behaviors and mitzvahs that we want to live up to. It's a time for quantum growth, so take advantage of it. It's also important to ask for forgiveness from family and friends. Yom Kippur only addresses your relationship with God. You have to deal with your interpersonal relationships before. During the day leading up to Yom Kippur, there are a number of things to do. It's an ideal time to give charity. Helping others in need is one of the most important spiritual traits to acquire. We also do kaparos, which is an ancient custom of holding a chicken or money over our head and symbolically transferring our spiritual blemishes onto something that will feed the poor and support others. Before the fast begins, we're supposed to have a special festive meal. Tradition teaches that people who partake of this meal are rewarded as if they fasted a second whole day. That's because preparing to have energy for the holiday in such a dignified manner is already a spiritual success. The Torah prohibits 5 things in Yom Kippur. We don't eat or drink or wash ourselves as a way to pull away from our physicality and focus on our spiritual concerns. We often fall for a fleeting, superficial pleasure and give up a moment that could have been transcendent and eternal. We also don't wear leather shoes. Leather shoes provide us with a sense of dignity that at times can turn into empty pride. Yom Kippur is a time to be grounded, to be humbled, to be brought back down to earth. There's also no intimacy, and we don't anoint with oils, which was a luxurious practice done more in the past. Yom Kippur begins with the moving Kol Nidre service, which releases us from vows we might have taken upon ourselves. We don't want to go into Yom Kippur with additional personal commitments that we might end up breaking. We also declare that everybody's welcome to participate in the service, as no door is ever closed to a Jew that wants to be part of the community. There are 5 different services throughout Yom Kippur, but they all share the same core, which are the confessions. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to verbally articulate to God one's wrongdoing. It's not enough to think thoughts or feel feelings. Now, there are 3 ingredients to the confession. First, you must say specifically what you did wrong. Secondly, you must express regret, that it hurts you knowing that you committed the wrong. And finally, you must make a commitment not to repeat the mistake in the future. Now, for those behaviors we know you can't change overnight, you should at least have a plan to start working on change. As we say each confession, it's a custom to bend over slightly and to tap your fist against your chest over your heart. This represents a sense of contrition and a recognition that we need to soften our hearts and become more sensitive to the life around us. During the prayers, we review the service that used to be done in the Temple of Jerusalem by the high priest on Yom Kippur. It's the one day a year he was allowed to go into the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum of the temple that housed the Golden Ark, which contained both sets of tablets, the tablets that Moses smashed at the time of the Golden Calf, and the second set of tablets he brought down on Yom Kippur. We also have the Yizkor service, which is a special memorial service set for parents that have passed away. Charity is typically pledged to serve as a merit on their behalf. But the most dramatic part of Yom Kippur is the Ne'ilah service, which means the closing of the gates. As night is about to fall, it's our last chance to effect the decree that God will seal in our lives for the upcoming year. It's a time to see your inner soul through the clear lens that Yom Kippur provides, and to tell God we're committed to live life on His terms, with His wisdom that we were sent here to preserve, fulfill, and shine with. Remember, God doesn't expect us to change overnight, but we can change our life course on this exceptionally holy day. Shana Tova, and may we all be sealed in the Book of Life.
And thank you, Rabbi Goldhar, for that really powerful, information-packed presentation. Usually we do now is Kahoot. Unfortunately, we're not going to do Kahoot this week, but I'm feeling that Kahoot juice is going, so we got to figure out a way to increase the competition. So for my competitors out there, stick with us. We'll get back to Kahoot into the future. But usually how we roll is we go to Kahoot, and from Kahoot we go right into Jamie. So as you know, one of the highlights of the show that comes at you every single week is the one and only Jamie Geller, bringing us really the ability to taste food by watching it. She's really incredible. Check out Jamie Geller.
Thank you, Charlie, so much. Hello, everybody. Shana Tova. Happy New Year. Rosh Hashanah just passed. Yom Kippur is just around the corner. And I know you're getting all the intense, heavy stuff in the other segments of the show. I like to think of this segment as the light part. So we're going to focus on the break fast, because you are all going to make it through the fast with flying colors. I believe in you. So I'm going to teach you how to make a homemade bagel. Now, this is fun. This is delicious. There is nothing like fresh bread baking in the oven. But I also think it's possibly, for sure, the most classic and potentially the most popular break fast food out there. Let us know if you agree. Enjoy it. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, an easy and meaningful fast. And think of me when you're eating your homemade bagel. Mwah! Shabbat Shalom.
And that was Jamie Geller. Thank you so much, Jamie, for always being a part of this. For more great videos, go to jamiegeller.com. You can check her out on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, at Jamie Geller, or at Julish by Jamie. And always, Jamie Geller is a huge part of what we are. Our next guest, I had a great opportunity to catch up with a wonderful person, really speaking about something as we develop this theme, how it plays into our lives. Her name is Aviva Barnett. And Aviva Barnett is an innate health educational consultant and trainer, and is the founder of MW Mindworks, an organization committed to fostering the inherent mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being that we all really possess. Aviva's marriage course, The Roadmap to Intimacy, has been taken by hundreds of people around the world. Her refreshing style and her presentation is clear, real, and practical. Her seminars, webinars, trainings, and private counseling sessions are transformative. Aviva lives in Passaic with her husband and 4 boys and is the author of Riding the Waves. Check out this conversation I had earlier this week with Aviva Barnett. Aviva, thank you so much for joining us on today's show. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I just have to say a big shout out to all of you because I get to see what goes on behind the scenes.
Right.
There's a lot that goes into these shows, so it's an honor and a privilege to really be here.
That's right. You have firsthand knowledge as to how much goes into one of these shows. So we thank you. And your larger self as well. We thank you and your husband. So we've been talking a lot about guilt. And a lot of times, if you misunderstand guilt, it impacts you in much longer ways after the activity is done, right? Negative self-image, it can overwhelm us. You can get stuck in negativity. So how does a person do that? How does a person manage between being appropriate in their feelings, if they did something wrong, versus not allowing that sort of drag with them afterwards?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that the way to separate out, like people talk about healthy guilt and unhealthy guilt. You know, healthy guilt is I recognize that I did something wrong, I made a mistake, and I just want to clean it up. And the truth is, I find when people do that, people are very respectful of like, oh, you can admit your mistake. Where it becomes unhealthy guilt is where I find when someone starts identifying as the mistake. And you can hear it in their language. It's not like I made a mistake. It's like, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm no good, I'm such a mess up, I'm a failure. There's like this identifying with what you did that now all of a sudden I lose a sense of who I really am. And that's what creates a lot of the pain.
Yeah, interesting, because you see that a lot, and it's an interesting distinction that you make that I think people make a mistake. I always say that the worst thing a Jew can ever say is that, I don't know if you see this a lot. I hate this. The worst thing a Jew can say is, I'm not a good Jew. Like people say it all the time, I'm not a good Jew. Like there's like a sense that whatever it is that I do or don't do, it somehow translates to who I am. And that distinction, I think, is critical, like you're saying.
Yeah, and it's critical in terms of people get stuck ruminating a lot in their mind over and over again what they did about what they did. And, someone was asking, like, how do you stop that? Well, I don't really know that there's a way to get in there. I'm kind of not a big one for, like, jumping in the ring with my, like, crazy thinking. I don't know that you can get in there and control and change and manage it. But I think the real leverage is not getting into all the guilty thinking as much as really going back to the core, as you're saying, as in your identity of who are you, being really clear that you're good, just like you're a good Jew, you're good in your core. That's the essence of who we are as a Jew. We're created in the image of God. There's a goodness, a kindness, a compassion. That's naturally who you are. And if I'm not identified with that, it's going to be very hard to work on doing a lot of the changes. People, have all these behaviors that they want to change, but if I'm not clear at the core, then my jump off point is I'm not going to be able to change the behaviors I'm looking to change.
Right. I think what you're saying is not only is it correct, I think it's so critical now to hear it moments before the date. Like, because on a regular Tuesday, it's not as relevant. But when you're going to walk into Yom Kippur, right, if you go in with the mentality of, I have this power versus not having that mentality, you're talking about two totally different days.
And you're talking about coming in a place that's totally different. Here you're going to, like you said, you're going to do all these off-hates on Yom Kippur and say all these mistakes that I made. And if I don't have a basis, a foundation, if I'm not a vessel to be able to kind of hold all that, then I would fall apart. I'd become a wreck. So I have to come in with knowing who I am and having myself and being a vessel to be able to, okay, now let's cleanse it out. And I have to believe that that's possible. And I'm with you that people don't necessarily believe it, but you know, it's such a minor point, and it seems like, no, I should be doing all these cheshbons, all these, like, every avenue that I've been making mistakes in. And I just feel like I'm with you. Now is the time to really be focusing on, if I can get clear on my health, my purity, my goodness. If I could see that in myself, I certainly will be able to better see that in my spouse and in my children, that is going to bring me so much farther in the tshuva. You know, what is tshuva? Tshuva is returning to yourself, returning to who you really are. That's what this concept is. Return to your truth. You're not a mistake. You're not bad. You're not a failure. You didn't mess up. You made a mistake. And owning the difference is the difference between a healthy tshuva and an unhealthy tshuva, where change happens.
Totally true. Aviva, thank you so much for being with us, for shining your light on us, and continue shining your light on the world.
Amen.
And I really think that point was so critical. And I really was taken by that conversation with her. And it's really important. And it all sort of connects, right? If we don't believe at our core, that there's something untouchable about our greatness, right? There is a piece of all of us, as much as we may have been great or failed this year, there's a piece of us that is infinite, that is unsoiled by anything we could have possibly done, that is the center spoke, if you will, of our greatness. And that piece is who we are. When we identify with that and we recognize the infinite potential in that, everything sort of changes. Regret stops being something we avoid because it allows us to be better. I remember watching a documentary about a certain athlete, and the athlete is still playing, but he's a Pro Bowl football player. I remember in the interview, his coach said he wasn't the most talented, but he loved watching game film. And what that means at a deeper level is he sensed there was something special that he had deep inside him, and he was willing to watch his mistakes and to look at it with an eye of growth. And you keep on doing that long enough, you're going to really grow into a person that you couldn't even recognize. In many ways, that's what we're getting at, which is this empowering sense of I could be more, I could be closer, I am beloved in God's eyes. And that comes with a responsibility. That comes with something. It's all part of what we're getting at. And I thank Aviva really for bringing that out. Check out this video really about really the time that it takes to grow. This is a great video by Aish.com called The Chinese Bamboo. Check this out. That was such a powerful piece. I don't know. There's something so powerful about the concept of working and working and working and not seeing the growth and assuming that nothing's happening when there's so much happening. That, by the way, this video, by the way, is really a lot of what this period of time represents. When you work in the physical world, you see the products of your labor fairly quickly. When you work in the spiritual world, when you work on yourself, when you work on your relationships, when you work on your depth, you don't see it right away. Where's God? How do I find him? How do I connect to him? Why do I do this thing for? How does this work? I'm doing it. Like, why don't I feel it? I moved and made strides. Like, how come I'm not seeing the impact? There's a constant feeling when you do spiritual work that I'm not seeing it and seeing it and seeing it and seeing it. And what makes this the story of the Chinese bamboo so real is that if you give up at any point, if you don't trust that there's something going on, even if you can't see it, you missed all the gains. That it all happens really in 6 weeks, but it doesn't. It happens over 5 years. That's really the joy of this period of time. The misconception that we get during this period of time is we think that there's some book in the sky and we got to like come down and like say what the king needs. It's not that simple. There's godliness inside us. And there's a life that we all can have that is addictively enjoyable, that is deep and meaningful, that is resilient to the world around us, that allows us to feel connection in a really deep way. And it takes work. But there's no greater work than this. And when we approach a Yom Kippur with the sense of, I want to work, and we understand the messages, that's really a regret in a positive sense. When the guilt that I feel really is the cover of love, when who I am is essentially good, when we put all these pieces together and we come into Yom Kippur with the sense of, I want to work. I know it'll be difficult, but greatness is difficult. And I'm willing to do the work to get closer to you. The entire day is of the happiest, most enjoyable days of our year. It's enjoyable to do things that are hard, that they're worth it. It's enjoyable to feel that level of growth. And that's what I wish for you, and for me, and for all of us. Remember, text one-on-one 97,000 for those who want to get a study partner. Now is the perfect time. Remember, next week we've got a great show coming up on Sukkot. It's about joy. And coming up right now, we've got this great presentation. It's a feature song. It's called The Bird of Hope, sung by Shlomo Simcha. It's actually featuring sand art by acclaimed artist Aaron Zev Bernstein. It's composed by Dina Storch, and the song is an excerpt from the Yom Kippur Within program. And this is what I want to leave you with, all of us with. You know, this week, it's not just a Shabbat Shalom, really, it's more than that. Because this is the Shabbat before the Holy of Holies. This is the Shabbat before the big day. My blessing to all of us is that we don't miss it. We don't get overwhelmed by the physicalness of this, by the fact that we're hungry or that we're tired or that it's uncomfortable or I'd rather be doing less. We don't get lost in the misconceptions of things. We don't get stuck in the way that maybe we got Judaism in Hebrew school or as kids or from that one teacher that was just sort of beating us down with this fear. But we allow ourselves to ascend. Yom Kippur is a time where we are angelic. My blessing to us is that this Yom Kippur is the beginning of a new path in all of our lives, where we have a year that's built on depth and connection and wisdom and real love for each other, for God, for the world. May we be all inscribed in the right books, where we all have years that give us everything that we need in the physical world and the material world that will allow us to really create deep, meaningful spiritual lives. So, from me and mine to you and yours, I wish you and your families Shana Tova, a year filled with health and happiness, blessings, and only good things in the spiritual and the material world. And I know and I pray that if we can come into this day with the right mentality I know when it's over. I know, and it goes a lot quicker than we realize. We'll look back and realize that this really is one of the greatest days of the year. Shana Tova.
The shul is crowded, the lights are dim. All have gathered for the Yom Adin. Yidden stand and Yidden pray. Tears keep flowing as they sway and they say their confessions, their acceptance, their commitment to be better, so much better. All is still, all are waiting for the Chazan who is swaying. To the heavens he lifts his eyes and he cries, oh Hashem, please give us hope for tomorrow. We have fallen, seems there's no way to rise. I cry and I know that you are listening. How can we go up again so high? A sudden flutter, a sudden chirp, all turn their heads to see a tiny bird flying high against the sky. It's getting tired, I don't know why, and it cries. The bird weakens and it lowers toward the ground, to the gutter. There they shudder. All are still, all are waiting for the poor little bird who's laying. It lifts up its wings so high as it soars towards the sky. Oh Hashem, please give us hope for tomorrow. We have fallen, seems there's no way to rise. How can we go up again so high? The Chazan speaks, the people hear. It's not just chance that made this bird fall here. Near the window, near the shul, it's a message Hashem's to explain. We can go higher, even though we are sometimes down so low, oh so low. All are still, all are waiting for the Chazan who's still swaying. He seems to be so far away as he begins the Kol Nidrei. Yes, I know there is hope for tomorrow. Though we've fallen, we can always rise. I feel, I cry, and I know that you are listening. Even though we fall, we will go high.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching the Shabbat Show. Thank you, Charlie. All of you here watching the Project Inspire Shabbat Show know our partnership with Momentum, formerly JWRP. They are having a Soul Summit. We encourage all of you to go right now to MomentumUnlimited.org. MomentumUnlimited.org. Join the Soul Summit. Donate. Join us as a partnership. Looking forward to seeing you at future joint programs together. Thank you.